To begin this morning, we are glad that you have chosen to be here for our Bible class hour, and you will be blessed for that choice. This morning, we're going to continue with our marriage seminar that began yesterday, and some of us spent a good bit of time yesterday getting some great information, some great encouragement, and some great motivation from Dr. Steve Wages, who is our guest speaker with us. He is a professor at Faulkner University, also the director of the Cloverdale Center for Youth and Family. They're at Faulkner University, and he's been there since 2016, and we know that he has blessed a lot of lives both on campus there and also in his marriage workshops that he has done. And so we are thankful that he is able to be with us today. He will be teaching us in our Bible class this morning. He'll also be speaking for our assembly today, and we are thankful that he's been able to be with us and that you're able to be with us this morning. Let's begin with a word of prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Brother Steve. Father in heaven, we come before you this morning to ask your blessings as we look at the importance of our marriage relationships. We thank you for Steve, who is with us today, for his abilities, for his knowledge, his experience, and for him being with us. Father, help us to open our hearts to know that we can change and we can improve our marriage relationships by opening our hearts to you and to your word. Bless him, Father, and bless us as we study. In Jesus' name, amen.
Brent, I assume we're done by 9:45?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Welcome, and thank you for being here. I look forward to our conversation during class and during the worship hour. In the interest of full disclosure, I was a little concerned last night. I'm like, I sure hope I didn't wear out my welcome. We worked hard yesterday. I pushed you a little longer in some of those sessions than normal, I think. And I'm like, hey, I hope I didn't wear out my welcome. But I do badly hope that you'll take those conversations and take those packets and continue those conversations at home. I really do. And pray that it will be a blessing in your marriage. At the end of the day, we looked at part one of the resolution of marital conflict. Conflict is the devil's number one MO for driving a wedge between a husband and wife, separating a man from his wife and from his children. And so we started looking at conflict in relationships, and there's been a lot of research on that, some good research on that. And to summarize it, what we said yesterday, the research of Gottman, listen to this and see if it sounds familiar to you. Negativity and distancing often begin when complaints are expressed or viewed by partners as criticisms. These critical attacks lead to defensive patterns of interaction that erode, watch this, erode the foundation of mutual respect within the relationship and replace it with a foundation of mutual contempt. In other words, I don't like you anymore. High levels of contempt then increase the likelihood that partners will withdraw from one another. He goes on to say extremes of marital distress are built on a legacy, watch this, of unhappiness and dissatisfaction resulting from the mismanagement of the ordinary difficulties encountered by couples. The ordinary difficulties, the mismanagement of those, just the day-to-day decisions that we have to make where perhaps we disagree, the mismanagement of those moments is what eventually leads couples to lose respect for one another. You register a complaint and it comes across as a criticism. When they feel criticized, they get defensive. As you complain and they get defensive, after a while you lose respect for one another and you begin to grow apart. Can we all not relate to that? And it can be something quite simple that we disagree on that the devil will use to drive a wedge between us. And so we ended our day yesterday by looking at scriptures God has a lot to say about how we conflict with one another. And we ended that by summarizing, watching a video, and suggesting that those scriptures are actually saying if you change your words, you can change your world. I believe that. If you change your words, you can change any relationship. And so today in Bible class, what I'm hoping to do with you is, as best I can, as quickly as I can, give you some practical things that would guide your conversations and your talking with each other so that conflict actually can build your relationship as you work through conflict together rather than driving the two of you apart. Would you like to enjoy your relationship for the rest of your life? Would you like to ride them out for the long haul? You can when you choose to master the art of effective communication. Are you good at communication? Communication is one of those things you can learn. It's a skill. You can read the books. You can watch videos. You can come to seminars. You can grow in and become a master of communication. Gottman says you either become a master of communication or you become a disaster as a couple. How about that? And so I would suggest to you that effective communication needs to begin with some ground rules. That as a husband and wife, we agree upon these ground rules for how we talk to one another. And here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to try to do this fairly quickly. If you have the packets that we used yesterday, I want you to do this. I'm going to give you some ground rules, and I want you to mark or either think about, is that a strength for me or is that a growth area for me? And then have some of those conversations at home, okay? Are you with me? So I'm going to do this without a lot of comment, maybe a little, but I want you to think, is that a strength in our relationship as how we talk to one another, or is that a growth area? Okay, you ready? Basic ground rules for communication. Things you should always do to avoid conflict becoming a cancer in your marriage. Be willing to be the first to say, I was wrong. Be willing to be the first to say, I'm sorry. Isn't that good? Hey, do you have it in you to be the first to say, hey, Wanda, I was wrong. Wanda, I am sorry. Be willing to both extend and accept forgiveness. Be willing to give your spouse the benefit of the doubt. That's one of my favorites. You know, sometimes my wife would do something that I'm like, ouch, that was a little zinger. And I could react to it in a pretty negative way, couldn't I? But you know what? I know my wife loves me. And I know she's not the zinger sort of person. And there's occasions where I'll even say to her, Wanda, could you say that a little differently? And I'll let her try again. But I don't get upset. I give her the benefit of the doubt. I don't think she was trying to start an argument or push my buttons. You know what I mean? Be willing to gather all the facts before you respond. Some of us, we said, are so smart, we don't even have to have all the facts before we can draw a conclusion. Isn't that true? And so be willing to ask questions. Be willing to first seek to understand. Be willing to get more information before you start evaluating and responding. Be willing to give in. We'll say more about that in a bit. Be willing to give up something. We'll say more about that here in a minute. More things you should always be willing to do. First, seek to understand, not evaluate by deferring judgment and asking more questions. Hey, I want to first seek to understand. Matter of fact, my marriage has been blessed since I have adopted the idea that I have a curiosity about what makes my wife tick. You know what I mean? Sometimes she'll respond in some way, and my initial impulse is to react to that in some way, to become defensive like we said before, but I have learned to pause and say, first seek to understand. I want to understand where she's coming from. I'm going to hold off on evaluation. I'm going to hold off on judgment. And I'm going to ask more questions because I have a curiosity about her. How did she come to that conclusion? How did she come to that opinion or such? Does that make good sense, I think? Choose the right time, choose the right tone. That's so important. Choose the right time, choose the right tone. The last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter is not the right time. I can suggest that to you, right? You know what I mean. Pause if necessary. Take time out before you respond. Look, we said yesterday, if you cannot respond with honor and respect, then it is not the right time. You need to take time out and come back to it later when you can respond to one another in honor and respect. Is that good? Show respect. Be open and honest. Make a positive request for change. Again, the research shows that oftentimes when we register a complaint, it comes across as a criticism. The antidote for that, we said, is a gentle startup. Don't begin with a you always, you never, a complaint. Begin with a gentle startup where maybe you acknowledge what they do positively and you make a positive request for change. Wanda, I appreciate when you, but would you consider, that's a gentle startup. That's not a pushing your button kind of statement, right? So I really like that positive request for change. Monitor your nonverbal expressions. Yes, the nonverbals, the look on our face, the sighing, the rolling the eyes, those kinds of things. Use I statements rather than you statements. I like that. You statements oftentimes put people on the defensive. It promotes escalation of a conflict. Whereas saying I think, I feel, I believe, I desire, or I want would be better. How about this? Things you should never do to avoid conflict becoming a cancer in your marriage. Never raise your voice in your own house. Oh, isn't that good? Some of us, it's like if you can't win by reason, go for volume. Right? We do that, don't we? And hey, it's a good ground rule to say, if we cannot talk about this in the right tone, then we need to take time out. I think that's one that you really need to adopt. We will not raise our voice. We will not yell. And I remember counseling a young couple, and she said, well, in our family, we yelled. And he said, in our family, we didn't. And she said, in our family, we yelled. And I'm like, what the two are you going to do? And she kept saying, in our family, we yelled. And I'm like, what are you going to do? And finally, he spoke up and said, well, I guess she'll yell and I won't. Never embarrass your mate in public. Don't make your mate the butt of your joke. Never get hysterical, hysterical, but also historical, right? Bringing up the past. We mentioned yesterday, you're having a hard time pressing 125 pounds as a couple, and you want to bring up history. That's like adding 35 pounds to the bar, right? Don't bring up history. Never call names. Never touch in anger. Never use the kids to win an argument. Never throw reason in the face of pain. Look, this is so important. I may say more about it in just a moment, but listen to me. Never throw reason in the face of pain, meaning never throw logic in the face of hurt, in the face of emotion. Are you with me? We'll say more about that in just a bit. Never question the logic of his or her feelings. Again, we'll say more in a moment. Never let the sun go down on your anger. What does Scripture say? Scripture says expedite the resolution of your differences. Don't let them fester. Don't let them build. It's probably not a literal let the sun go down, but it does mean you resolve your differences as quickly as possible. Never ever think your spouse shouldn't be hurt by something that wouldn't hurt you. Just because you wouldn't feel that way doesn't mean his or her feelings are not legitimate. Never reverse an argument. Hey, maybe I did, but I remember when you, right? Have you done that before? Push buttons that way. Never fail to listen to your mate. Oh, isn't that so good? Matter of fact, Scripture, I believe over in Luke, says, be careful how you listen. And our marriages would be blessed, our relationships would be blessed if we would simply become better listeners to one another. Never harden yourself against your mate. And what I mean by that is I'm always hopeful for a couple as long as they're talking. Even if they're not talking well, if they're still talking, I'm hopeful. But if they have hardened themselves to where they're not talking, we've got some real challenges. Never forget that the relationship is almost always more important than the issue. Isn't that true? Amen? Most of the things that we disagree on, our relationship is far more important than the issue. Is that good? Could you spend some time this week as couples going through that list and saying, here's a strength, here's something we need to grow in. Put an S by it, put a G by it. Could you do that? I hope so. Again, I'm trying to give you some practical things as quickly as possible to resolve conflict. You must eliminate the 6 love busters, and Harley's written a book on the love busters. I won't say much here, but I touched on them yesterday. But these things you must eliminate from your marriage. There are things, listen to me, there are things we do to build love, and there are things that we do to diminish love. There are things that we do to sustain love, and there are things we do to destroy love. The love busters are just that. There are things that we do that will literally destroy our relationship. You've got to get rid of them in your relationship. Number 1, selfish demands, attempts by your spouse to force you to do something for them, usually with an implied threat of punishment if you refuse. Being intimidating towards the other one. We said selfishness is still the number 1 enemy of marriages. Disrespectful judgments. Attempts by your spouse to change your attitudes, beliefs, and behavior by trying to force you into their way of thinking. In other words, your opinion, your experience is discounted in some way, and I try to deal with your ideas and your opinions and your expectations, and I do it in a disrespectful way, in a way that dishonors you. You with me? We've got to eliminate that from our relationships. Number 3, angry outburst. Deliberate attempts by your spouse to hurt you because of anger towards you, usually in the form of verbal or physically intimidating reactions. Hey, I hate to confess, I've had moments in my marriage where my wife would look at me and say, Steve, your father is coming out in you. And I knew exactly what she was saying. That is not a good thing, unfortunately. And so I would have these moments of angry outbursts. But again, if you cannot speak in a way that shows honor and respect, it is not the right time. You've got to eliminate angry outbursts. Dishonesty, deliberately giving false information or false impressions about thoughts, feelings, habits, likes, and such. Look, she can live with an imperfect man. She can't live with a deceiver. Someone who's dishonest with her, who tells half-truths and such. Number 5, annoying habits, behavior repeated by your spouse without much thought or intention that bothers you, including personal mannerisms. Probably one of the more common ones today is the phone. Oh, it aggravates me if I'm trying to speak to my wife and her to me. She's trying to speak to me, and my head is like this. And isn't that the way we function nowadays, right? Where we mostly are looking down. And number 6, independent behavior. Behavior conceived and executed by your spouse without consideration of your feelings. These often involves one's personal interest and the scheduling of activities. I'll give you a real life example. I get a phone call maybe to go to a church to do a marriage seminar like this, and I appreciate that. My wife, we have the understanding that I will not say yes, and Brent, I can't remember if I followed this or not. I hope I did. We have an understanding that I will talk to her before I give a firm yes, put it on the calendar. She wants to be consulted about our calendar, and she knows more about that than I do sometimes. So it's a real frustration to her if I say, hey, I got a call to go to Rose Hill Church in May, and she says, well, did you accept or set it up? And I do that without involving her. I make independent decisions like that pertain to our life together. Does that make sense, or is that good? You got to eliminate the 6 love busters. Now, David's going to help me watch a video with you. I want to talk about the anatomy of an argument. I want you to watch this video and see if any of your arguments kind of go like this, okay? David, thank you.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way.
Hey, she tries to express an emotion, a feeling. And what did we say yesterday about emotions? All negative behavior, all negative emotions are the result of unfulfilled expectations. We also said until you deal with the emotion, you probably haven't dealt with the problem. Are you with me? Here we go, yes. And so she tries to express an emotion or feeling, and if it's okay, we'll lean on the guys a little bit here. It's not just the guys that do this, but quite often maybe it is. But oftentimes when my wife goes to express an emotion, I tend to think in terms of, well, how can I help you solve the problem? Fix the problem, kind of like the video was illustrating. Let me give you a real life example, and you can laugh at me if you want to. Probably appropriately. My wife is a medical transcriptionist. She gets paid on production. If she is typing, she is making money. If she is not typing, she's not making any money. I come home one day, and she was as flustered and frustrated as she can be. I haven't been able to get any work done for 4 hours. The internet, it's all high-speed internet. She says, I don't know what's wrong with the internet. I haven't been able to type. And I've been trying to fix, I've been working on it for 3 hours, and we haven't been able to get it resolved. Well, guess what Steve said? 1A, he hears as a message that he needs to be responsible and tries to fix the problem. So I did the logical thing to me, much like the video. I said, well, if you can't be productive over here with your work, I bet you know where this is going. Why don't you go do some of your, yeah, I gotta say it. Why don't you go do some of your housework, and maybe by the time you do that, you come back, all the internet problems will be resolved, and then you'll be, oh, here, let me tell you, that did not go over well. Oh, and look, 20-something, 30 years later, I'm still not sure what I did wrong. It still makes sense to me. If you can't be productive here, why don't you go over here and be productive, right? And, oh no, that was not a good thing. See, I gave really no attention to her emotion, her feelings. The other thing that we men tend to do is, well, what if we don't know how to solve their problem? Like we really don't have any answers for the problem. I think we do the second one. I feel rather inadequate. I feel maybe threatened or something, particularly inadequate, and I question the logic of her feelings, as we mentioned a moment ago. We say something along the lines of, you know, if you wouldn't think that way, you wouldn't feel that way. Problem solved. Don't we do that? Hey, if you just change your stinking thinking, you wouldn't feel that way. Glad I could help. We do that, don't we? And women do it also, but I'm picking on the guys at the moment. You see the pan of nachos there? It's there intentionally to remind me to tell you about the young couple I knew that were engaged, and they went to the local restaurant, and she ordered nachos, and she specifically told the waitress, I don't want any nachos, any sour cream on my nachos. I don't like sour cream. Would you know, the waitress comes out, delivers the nachos, and there's a blob of sour cream on each one. And so the guy's probably thinking, since she's his date, kind of thinking, I need to do something. I need to solve this problem. But watch this. I think he was more concerned about the waitress' feelings than he was her feelings. He didn't want to confront the waitress and say, hey, waitress, come here. You know, she said she didn't like sour cream. Don't put... right? He'd have to confront the waitress. And he was concerned about the waitress' feelings. So he literally looks at his fiancée and says this, well, if you'd just get it out of your head that sour cream tastes bad, we wouldn't have this problem. Yeah, that's a rather classical example of, hey, when we don't know what to do with his or her problem, we question her emotions, her feelings, we question the logic of it. And hear me say, you should not throw reason in the face of emotion. And yes, I'm a cognitive behaviorist in training, and I really believe, yes, as long as you hold on to your stinking thinking, you're probably going to feel that way. But in the moment, that is not what my wife needed that day. She needed me to attend to her frustration of 4 hours computer problems. So she tries to share again. He withdraws into activity. She gets more angry. He criticizes her out of his growing anger. She feels put down. He feels rejected and unhappy with his own behavior. Isn't that true? Men, have you ever been unhappy with your own behavior in the moment of a conflict, unwilling to admit it or be vulnerable? He or she loses temper. It escalates, and the opportunity is lost to it. Hey, does that sound like it sounds like my marriage. I've had that happen plenty of times. So here's what I want to do. I want to try to give you a few very practical ideas to avoid some of those kinds of exchanges. A simple 1, 2, 3 model of communication. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just make it more simple? So here's a simple 1, 2, 3 model. Number 1, everybody wants to be heard. Everybody has a story to tell. Matter of fact, I would say to you, oftentimes untold stories are unhealed wounds. Oh, everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants their feelings validated. hey, it's not that you would feel the same way, but I'd at least like to think that my emotions and feelings are valid and my emotions and feelings are important to you. Listen to this. When you pay attention to people's emotions, they almost always feel cared for. Even if they disagree with you on the facts, even if they disagree with you on the opinions, even if they disagree with you on the expectations, when you give attention to their emotions, they almost always feel cared for. Are you with me? Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants their feelings validated, and then everybody wants their problem solved. Now, if we were to do a little gender stereotyping, we would say that women are particularly good at which ones? 1 and 2, right? I think so. I believe women are particularly good at 1 and 2, sharing the story, being empathetic, validating feelings. Men are probably particularly prone to do what? Do number 3, be problem solvers. You see, when they were raised and she was over here 3 years old playing with 2 dolls, they were talking together, they were sharing stories, right? They were expressing feelings and all that. What's he doing at 3 years old? He's out in the sandbox building a bridge. Men are somewhat socialized, I think, to be problem solvers. If you're in the business world, as I was at one time, and you're charging someone $200 an hour, they want you to solve problems. They're not as interested in all of the story and the feelings and such. They're interested in results. So I'm trying to defend the men out there and say we get it pretty honest. We're kind of socialized with the idea of being problem solvers. But hear me say this to the men. What did my wife need that day? She really needed number 1 and number 2. Wanda, tell me what happened. Well, what have you tried? And just explore the story. And then how are you feeling about that? And frustrated, angry, right? Yeah, and just validate her feelings. And guess what, guys? It's a real relief when I don't believe I have to solve the problem. Do you remember when your teenagers came to you and they had some kind of issue in their life and they were being rather dramatic and all that? What did they need and want from you? They wanted you to listen to their story, listen to what's going on. They wanted you to validate their feelings. Didn't they actually get upset with you as parents when you started telling them what to do? Solving the problem? Well, the same thing happens in marriage. Yes, so what I have done is I have learned to do number 1 and 2 and put number 3 on hold. I will literally do 1 and 2 with my wife, Wanda. And then I have learned to do this. Wanda, would you like some suggestions or not? And I let her decide on number 3, whether she wants my opinion, my ideas of what is to be done. But I put number 3 on hold until I've given attention to her story and to her emotions and feelings. Okay, very quickly. 4 C's for conflict resolution. We'll try to do these quickly. You really only have a certain number of options when you are faced with conflict. 1 is to coexist. That simply means we celebrate our differences. Wanda and I are different people. We talked yesterday about how opposites attract. And we asked, do opposites attack? And we're different people. And so, but there are some things where we can simply coexist. One, to do it your way, and I can do it my way. There may not be a lot of those things, but there are some of those things where we can simply celebrate our differences. You don't have to look at it and do it the same way as I do. How about capitulation? Some issues come up, and your option is to capitulate. What does that mean? It means to give in. Give in. Listen to this. There are many arguments Wanda and I will never have because Steve is willing to give in. There are many arguments Wanda and Steve will never have because Wanda is willing to give in. Let's do it your way. Well, good, better, best. My way's better. No. Hey, it doesn't matter, good, better, best. I'm okay giving in. Let's do it your way. Matter of fact, that research over on conflict that Gottman did over thousands of couples, one of his 3 key findings was for couples who were masters of communication and conflict, the men were willing to do it her way. The men were willing to be influenced by her. Isn't it interesting that that was one of the things he discovered? Yes, I'm willing to give in. I'm willing to do it your way. I value your experience. I value your opinion. The third one would be compromise. Let me say this about give in. The idea of giving in, I would suggest this. It shouldn't be the same person that's giving in all the time. There needs to be some equity where we both give and take in relationships. Number 3, compromise. There, I like to use the term give up. Neither one of us gets entirely what we maybe were looking for, but I'm willing to give up some of my position. You're willing to give up some of your position, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. We are willing to compromise. Then the last one, collaboration, is just a big word to say, hey, we need to look at what the deeper issue is in this. It's really maybe a heart issue. Somebody help me with my time. I've got cataracts. I'm facing surgery. I can't even read that clock. Is it? Okay, all right. We'll try to sprint. Let me give you a quick illustration. I knew a couple I was doing counseling with, a young couple, and they came in one week and they said, hey, we got in a big argument at Publix, and she said, I almost called a cab to take me home. And I'm like, well, what happened? Tell me. And she said, well, we've got in an argument over which can of peaches to buy. And I'm like, okay, what's the deal? And she said, well, we argued over whether to buy the big can or little can. Now, if you were to guess, who wanted to buy the big can? He did. Why? Because he knows economics 101. The bigger the can, the better the deal. I'm always trying to win on the deal. Well, let's buy the big can. She wanted to buy the little can. Why did she want to buy the little can? No wasting. It's just the two of us. If we open that big can, we eat a bit of it, put it in the fridge, and end up throwing it out, right? Yeah, and they got in a right over big can or little can. And so I suggest to you, and she almost called a cab, and I suggest to you they had 4 choices. They made a major withdrawal from the Love Bank, a $500 withdrawal from the Love Bank over a $5 decision, literally, is what happened in their relationship. They could have coexisted. Rather than making a $500 withdrawal, why don't we just buy both of them and we'll skip the argument? How about that? It would have been better to coexist. Or how about capitulate? If one of them would have simply said, well, let's do it your way. It's not worth our relationship's more important than the issue. I'm going to give in. Let's do it your way. They would have been better, wouldn't they? Or how about compromise? Instead of the big can or little can, hey, why don't we buy the little 6-pack plastic things where you tear one off and we'll compromise? But you and I both know that wasn't the issue. The real issue was what I'm talking about, collaboration. What is the deeper issue? And in this case, it was power. They were duking it out over who has control in this relationship, who wears the pants in this relationship. Are you with me? Are you with me? Hey, let me give you an idea, and I'll do quickly so I can try to wrap up here in a moment. Hey, I like the 4 C's, and in resolving conflicts. I really like teamwork, adopt a no-losers policy. And for time's sake, let me just summarize it here and with you and maybe just show you one slide. This couple said they agreed that from that point on, it would never be acceptable for either of them to walk away from any interaction feeling as if they had lost. Each spouse had to feel good about what happened. You don't have to worry that the other person will accept a solution that makes him or her feel bad. In other words, a solution that's a withdrawal from the love bank. That was their new goal. I love that. You see, when you're on the same team, listen, as a couple, you either win together or you lose together. Are you with me? You either win together or you lose together. And so, as a couple, adopt a no losers policy. We will not walk away from this decision where one of us believes they have lost, where one of us looks at what we decided as a withdrawal from the love bank. We will not tolerate that. We will continue to pray about it. We will continue to talk about it. We will continue to look for God's wisdom in it until we are in agreement. Let me say this real quickly. I'd love to come back sometime and do a Bible class or something over discerning God's will in your life. How do you discern whether God is in this or God is in that? Let me propose something to you. Romans 8 speaks very clearly about being led by the Spirit. Do you suppose that if Steve is led by the Spirit and knows what that means in terms of spiritual discernment and spiritual judgment, and Wanda is led by the Spirit and knows what that means, do you believe that the Spirit on the major issues of life is going to lead me to one place and lead her to another place? I don't believe so. The Spirit is a spirit of unity and will lead us into an agreement with one another. So we seek God's will in decisions we make and discernment, and we adopt a no losers policy, and we look for God's judgment in the decisions we make. Let me close. I'll skip a few things here. Let me close with this. And frankly, we could spend a couple of hours talking about emotional communication. I'd love to come back and do a Bible class with some couples or something. But look at Proverbs. The purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out. Oh, we're talking about deep waters. So Smalley suggests that when it comes to conflicts, that if you begin anywhere else other than dealing with the emotions, you probably set yourself up for failure. First, attend to the emotions, as we have been alluding to. The deeper emotions. People feel cared for when you pay attention to their emotions and their feelings. And let me just be honest. Most of us aren't very good at that. See, we would rather talk about the facts. Wanda and I can argue over the facts. Wanda and I can argue over opinions. We can argue over interpretations. We can argue over expectations. And what Smalley says, hey, yeah, if you would avoid all of that and first give attention to the emotions that's beneath the issue, you'll do yourself a favor and you'll avoid a lot of escalating kinds of conflict. Now, let me quickly give an example from yesterday. Some of you weren't here, but I told a few stories on my wife. And it occurred to me last night, I don't want to leave them the wrong impression with my wife. We talked about pieology and how she and the grandkids went through the line and they all got water, and I came behind and I ordered a Diet Coke, and my wife did this. It's like, see, she expected me to follow suit and order water as well like they did and save a little money and such. And I came along as a 60-something-year-old gainfully employed and said, hey, I'd like a Diet Coke. And I told the story yesterday how that escalated into a conflict. But here's what I think Smalley is saying. And it's called the fear dance, and we'd have to have a few hours with it. But the fear dance. Wanda needs financial security, so she fears insecurity. Right? And so certain things will push her financial security button. Let me say this clearly. It's her button. She's responsible for her button. She's responsible for managing her emotions. So when I came along and ordered the Diet Coke, it pushed her financial security button, and the rest of the story, we went back to the house and I started talking about buying patio furniture. It pushed her financial security button. Those who were here yesterday heard that, right? And she was reactive to that. It's her button. She's responsible for managing her emotions. But watch this. If I love her, I care how she feels. And so rather than me reacting, as I did in that moment, and it escalating as it did in that moment, if I follow this passage, the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws it out. Watch this. Even though she's responsible for her emotions and her button, as a loving husband, can I do what I can to help her manage it? And see, what was really being said is she has a fear of insecurity. That was just a symptom that she needed more information from Steve about our finances. Wanda, let's sit down and look at where we are, where we will be 3 years from now, where we should be 5 years from now. And guess what? Since I did that, she hasn't said a thing to me about a Diet Coke. Do you see what I mean by look at the deeper waters? Look at the emotion beneath how your spouse is reacting to you. And until you deal with the deeper waters, the emotion, you probably haven't addressed the problem. Are you with me? Amen. Hey, I think we're dismissed. I can hear. I can't see, but I can hear. Thank you.